Digha Nikāya, Sutta number 17, Mahāsudassana Sutta, King Mahāsudassana. Thus have I heard. At one time the Blessed One was staying at Kushinara in the Malla's sal grove shortly before his final Nibbāna, between the twin sal trees. Then the Venerable Ananda came to the Lord, prostrated, and then sat down to one side, and said, "Blessed Lord, may the Venerable Sir not pass away in this miserable little town of wasteland, right in the jungle, in the back of beyond. Blessed Lord, there are other great cities such as Champa, Rajagha, Savatthi, Saketa, Kosambi, or Varanasi. In those places there are wealthy Khattiyas, warrior class, Brahmins, and householders who are devoted to the Tathagata, and they will provide for the Tathagata's funeral in proper manner." Ananda, do not call it a miserable little town of wasteland, right in the jungle, in the back of beyond. Once upon a time, Ananda, King Mahāsudassana was a wheel-turning monarch, a rightful and righteous king, who had conquered the land in 4 directions and ensured the security of his realm. This King Mahāsudassana had this very Kushinara under the name of Kusavati for his capital, and it was 12 yojanas long from east to west, and 7 yojanas wide from north to south. Kusavati was rich, prosperous, and well populated, crowded with people and well stocked with food, just as the Deva city of Alakamanda is rich, prosperous, and well populated, crowded with yakas and well stocked with food. So was the royal city of Kusavati. And the city of Kusavati was never free of 10 sounds by day or night: the sound of elephants, horses, carriages, kettle drums, side drums, lutes, singing, cymbals, and gongs, with the cries of "Eat, drink, and be merry" as the 10th. So was the royal city of Kusavati. The royal city of Kusavati was surrounded by 7 encircling walls. 1 was of gold, 1 of silver, 1 of beryl, 1 of crystal, 1 was of ruby, 1 emerald, and 1 of all sorts of gems. The gates of Kusavati were of 4 colors: 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl gem, 1 crystal. And before each gate were set 7 pillars, 3 or 4 times a man's height. 1 was of gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, 1 crystal, 1 ruby, 1 emerald, and 1 of all sorts of gems. Kusavati was surrounded by 7 rows of palm trees, of the same materials. The gold trees had gold trunks with silver leaves and fruit. The silver trees had silver trunks with gold leaves and fruit. The beryl trees had beryl trunks with crystal leaves and fruit. The crystal trees had crystal trunks with beryl leaves and fruit. The ruby trees had ruby trunks and emerald leaves and fruit. The emerald trees had emerald trunks and ruby leaves and fruit, while the trees of all sorts of gems were the same as regards trunks, leaves, and fruit. The sound of the leaves stirred by the wind was lovely, delightful, sweet, and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. Ananda, Those who were libertines, rowdy, or drunkards in Kusavati had their desires muffled by the sound of the leaves in the wind. King Mahāsudassana was endowed with the 7 treasures and the 4 properties. What 7? Once, on a fast day of the 15th of the month, when the king had washed his head and gone up to the veranda on top of his palace to observe the fasting day, the divine wheel treasure appeared to him. 1,000-spoked, complete, with its circular rim, hub, and all accessories. On seeing it, King Mahāsudassana thought, I have heard that when a duly anointed Khattiya king sees such a wheel on the fasting day of the 15th, he will become a wheel-turning monarch. May I become such a monarch? Then, rising from his seat, covering one shoulder with his robe, the king took a gold vessel in his left hand, sprinkled the wheel with his right hand, and said, May the noble wheel treasure turn. May the noble wheel treasure conquer. The wheel turned to the east, and King Mahāsudassana followed it with his 4-fold army. And in whatever country the wheel stopped, the king took up residence with his 4-fold army. Those kings who faced him in the eastern region came to him and said, Come, your majesty, welcome, your majesty. We are yours, your majesty. Rule us, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drinks. Be moderate in eating. And those who had faced him in the eastern region became his subjects. And when the wheel had plunged into the eastern sea, it emerged and turned south, and King Mahāsudassana followed it with his 4-fold army. And those kings in the southern sea came to him and said, Come, your majesty, welcome, your majesty. We are yours, your majesty. Rule us, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drinks. Be moderate in eating. And those who had faced him in the southern region became his subjects. Having plunged into the southern sea, it turned west, and the king Mahāsudassana followed it with his 4-fold army. And those kings in the western region came to the king and said, Come, your majesty, welcome, your majesty. We are yours, your majesty. Rule us, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drinks. Be moderate in eating. And those who had faced him in the western region became his subjects. Having plunged into the western sea, the wheel turned north, and King Mahāsudassana followed it with his 4-fold army. And those kings who faced him in the northern region came and said, Come, your majesty, welcome, your majesty. We are yours, your majesty. Rule us, your majesty. And the king said, Do not take life. Do not take what is not given. Do not commit sexual misconduct. Do not tell lies. Do not drink strong drinks. Be moderate in eating. And those who had faced him in the northern region became his subjects. Then The wheel treasure, having conquered the lands from sea to sea, returned to the royal capital of Kusavati and stopped before the king's palace, as he was trying a case, as if to adorn the royal palace. And this is how the wheel treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the elephant treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana, pure white, of sevenfold strength, with the wonderful power of traveling through the air, a royal tusker called Uposatha. Seeing him, the king thought, "What a wonderful riding elephant! If only he could be brought under control." And this elephant treasure submitted to control just like a thoroughbred that had been trained for a long time. And once the king, to try him, mounted the elephant treasure at the crack of dawn and rode him from sea to sea, returning to Kusavati in time for breakfast. That is how the elephant treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the horse treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana with a crow's head, dark-maned, with the wondrous power of traveling through the air, a royal stallion called Valahaka. And the king thought, "What a wonderful mount! If only he could be brought under control." And this horse treasure submitted to control just like a thoroughbred that had been trained for a long time. And once the king, to try him out, mounted the horse treasure at the crack of dawn, and rode him from sea to sea, returning to Kusavati in time for breakfast. And that is how the horse treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the jewel treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. It was a beryl gem, pure, excellent, well cut into 8 facets, clear, bright, flawless, perfect in every respect. The luster of this jewel treasure radiated for an entire yojana round about. Once, the king, in order to examine it, went on night maneuvers on a dark night with his 4-fold army, with the jewel treasure fixed to the top of his standard. And all who lived in the villages round about started their daily work, thinking it was daylight. And that is how the jewel treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the woman treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana, lovely, fair to see, charming, with a lotus-like complexion, not too tall or too short, not too thin or too fat, not too dark or too fair, of more than human, deva-like beauty. The touch of the skin of the woman treasure was like cotton or silk, and her limbs were cool when it was hot, and warm when it was cold. Her body smelled of sandalwood, and her lips of lotus. This woman treasure rose before the king, and retired later, after he had gone to sleep. She was always generously obliging to do his pleasure, and she was pleasant of speech. This woman treasure was not unfaithful to the king, even in thought, much less in deed. And thus is how the woman treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the householder treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. With the divine eye which, as the result of kamma, he possessed, he saw where treasure, owned and ownerless, was hidden. He came to the king and said, "Have no fear, your majesty. I will look after your wealth properly." Once the king, to test him, went on board a ship and had it taken to the current in the middle of the Ganges. Then he said to the householder treasure, "Householder, I want some gold coins." "Well then, sire, let the ship be brought to one of the shores. I want the gold coins here, in the middle of the river." Then the householder touched the water with both hands and drew out a vessel full of gold coins, saying, "Is this enough, sire? Will this do, sire?" And the king said, "That is enough, householder. That will do. You have served me enough." And that is how the householder treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. Then the counselor treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana. He was wise, experienced, clever, and competent to advise the king on how to proceed with what should be proceeded with, and to withdraw from what should be withdrawn from, and to overlook what should be overlooked. He came to the king and said, "Have no fear, your majesty. I shall advise you." And that is how the counselor treasure appeared to King Mahāsudassana, and how he was equipped with all the 7 treasures. Again, Ananda, King Mahāsudassana was endowed with the 4 properties. What for? Firstly, the king was handsome, good to look at, pleasing, with a complexion like the finest lotus, surpassing other men. Secondly, he was long-lived, outliving other men. Thirdly, he was free from illness, free from sickness, with a healthy digestion, less subject to cold and heat than that of other men. Fourthly, he was beloved and popular with Brahmins and householders, just as a father is beloved by his children. So he was with Brahmins and householders. And they were beloved by the king, as children are beloved by their father. Once, the king set out for the pleasure park with his 4-fold army, and the Brahmins and householders came to him and said, "Kindly pass by us slowly, sire, so that we may see you for as long as possible." And the king said to the charioteer, "Drive the chariot slowly, that I can see these Brahmins and householders for as long as possible." Thus, King Mahāsudassana was endowed with these 4 properties. Then, King Mahāsudassana thought, "Suppose I were to construct lotus ponds between the palm trees, 100 bow lengths apart." And he did so. The lotus ponds were lined with 4-colored tiles, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal, each pond being approached by 4 staircases, 1 gold, 1 silver, 1 beryl, and 1 crystal. And the gold staircase had gold posts, with silver railings and banisters. The silver had silver posts with gold railings and banisters, and so on. And the lotus ponds were provided with 2 kinds of parapet, gold and silver. The gold parapets having gold posts, silver railings, and banisters, and the silver parapets having silver posts, gold railings, and banisters. Then the king thought, "Suppose I were to provide each pond with suitable flowers for garlands, blue, yellow, red, and white lotuses, which will last through all seasons without fading." And he did so. Then he thought, "Suppose I were to place bathmen on the banks of these ponds, to bathe those who come there." And he did so. Then the king thought, "Suppose I were to establish charitable posts on the banks of these ponds, so that those who want food can get it, those who want to drink can get it, those who want clothes can get it, those who want to transport can get it, those who want a sleeping place can also get it, those who want a wife can get one, and those who want gold coin can get it. And he did so. Then the Brahmins and householders took great wealth and went to the king, saying, Sire, here is our wealth that we have gathered together especially for your majesty. Please accept it. Thank you, friends, but I have enough wealth from legitimate revenues. Let this be yours, and take away more besides. Being thus refused by the king, they withdrew to one side and considered, It would not be right for us to take this wealth back home again. Suppose we were to build a dwelling for King Mahāsudassana. So they went back to the king and said, Sire, we would build you a dwelling. And the king accepted by silence. Then Sakka, ruler of the gods, knowing in his mind King Mahāsudassana's thought, said to the attendant Deva, Vissakamma, Come, friend Vissakamma, and build a dwelling for King Mahāsudassana, a palace called Dhamma. Very good, Lord, Vissakamma replied, and as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm or flex it again, he at once vanished from the heaven of the 33 and appeared before King Mahāsudassana and said to him, Sire, I shall build you a dwelling, a palace called Dhamma. The king assented by silence, and Vissakamma built him the palace of Dhamma. The palace of Dhamma Ananda was a yojana in length from east to west, and half a yojana wide from north to south. The whole palace was faced up to 3 times a man's height, with tiles of 4 colors, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal, and it contained 84,000 columns of the same 4 colors. It had 24 staircases of the same 4 colors, and the gold staircases had gold posts with silver railings and banisters. The silver had silver posts with gold railings and banisters, and so on. It also had 84,000 chambers of the same colors. In the gold chamber was a silver couch. In the silver chamber, a gold couch. In the beryl chamber, an ivory couch, and in the crystal chamber, a sandalwood couch. On the door of the gold chamber, a silver palm tree was figured, with silver stem, gold leaves, and fruit. On the door of the silver chamber, a golden palm tree was figured, with golden trunk, leaves, and fruit. On the door of the beryl chamber, a crystal palm tree was figured, with crystal trunk and beryl leaves and fruit. On the door of the crystal chamber, a beryl palm tree was figured, with crystal leaves and fruit. Then King Mahāsudassana thought, Suppose I were to make a grove of palm trees all of gold by the door of the great gabled chamber where I sit in the daytime. And he did so. Surrounding the Dhamma palace were 2 parapets, one of gold, one of silver. The gold one had gold posts, silver railings, and banisters, and the silver one had silver posts, gold railings, and banisters. The Dhamma palace was surrounded by 2 nets of chiming bells. One net was gold with silver bells, the other silver with gold bells. And when these nets of bells were stirred by the wind, their sound was lovely, delightful, sweet, and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. And those who were libertines and drunkards in Kusavati had their desires muffled by the sound of those nets of bells. And when the Dhamma palace was finished, it was hard to look at, dazzling to the eyes. Just as in the last month of the rains, in autumn, when there is a clear and cloudless sky, The sun breaking through the mists is hard to look at. So was the Dhamma palace when it was finished. Then the king thought, suppose I were to make a lotus lake called Dhamma in front of the Dhamma palace. So he did so. This lake was a yojana long from east to west, and half a yojana wide from north to south, and lined with 4 kinds of tiles, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal. There were 24 staircases to it of 4 different kinds, gold, silver, beryl, and crystal. The gold staircases had gold posts with silver railings and banisters. The silver had gold railings and banisters. The silver had silver posts with gold railings and banisters, and so on. The Dhamma lake was surrounded by 7 kinds of palm trees. The sound of the leaves stirred by the wind was lovely, delightful, sweet, and intoxicating, just like that of the 5 kinds of musical instruments played in concert by well-trained and skillful players. Ananda, those who were libertines and drunkards in Kusavati, had their desires muffled by the sound of the leaves in the wind. When the Dhamma palace and the Dhamma lake were finished, King Mahāsudassana, having satisfied every wish of those who at the time were recluses or Brahmins, or revered as such, ascended into the Dhamma palace. Then King Mahāsudassana thought, of what kamma is it the fruit? Of what kamma is it the result that I am now so mighty and powerful? Then he thought to himself, it is the fruit, the result of 3 kinds of kamma, of giving, of self-control, and of renunciation. Then the king went to the great gable chamber and standing at the door exclaimed, may the thought of lust cease. May the thought of ill will cease. May the thought of cruelty cease. Thus far and no further the thought of lust, of ill will, of cruelty. Then the king went into the great gable chamber, sat down cross-legged on the golden couch, and detached from all sense desires, detached from unwholesome mental states, entered upon and remained in the first jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, born of detachment, filled with delight and joy. With the subsiding of thinking and pondering, by gaining inner tranquility and oneness and unification of mind, the king entered upon and remained in the second jhana, which is without thinking and pondering, born of collectedness of mind, filled with joy and delight. With the fading away as well of delight, remaining imperturbable, mindful and clearly aware, the king experienced in himself that joy of which the noble ones say, happy is he who dwells with equanimity and mindfulness. He entered upon and remained in the third jhana, and having given up pleasure and pain, and with the disappearance of former gladness and sadness, he entered and remained in the fourth jhana, which is beyond pleasure and pain, and purified by equanimity and mindfulness. Then King Mahāsudassana, emerging from the great gable chamber, went to the golden gable chamber and, seated cross-legged on the silver couch, stayed pervading first 1 quarter, then the second, then the third, and then the 4th quarter with a mind filled with loving kindness. Thus he remained, spreading the thought of loving kindness, above, below, and across, everywhere, always with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, magnified, unbounded, without hatred or ill will. And he did likewise with compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. Of King Mahāsudassana's 84,000 cities, his capital Kusavati was the chief. Of his 84,000 palaces, Dhamma was the chief. Of his 84,000 gabled halls, the great gabled chamber was the chief. His 84,000 couches were of gold, silver, ivory, sandalwood, covered with fleece, wool, spread with kadali deer hide, with head covers, with red cushions at both ends. Of his 84,000 elephants adorned with gold ornaments, with gold banners and spread with gold nets, Uposhata, the royal tusker, was chief. Of his 84,000 carriages, covered with lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, or with orange-colored cloth, adorned with gold ornaments, gold banners, and spread with gold nets, the chariot Vajayanta was the chief. Of his 84,000 jewels, the jewel treasure was the chief. Of his 84,000 wives, Queen Subhadda was the chief. Of his 84,000 householders, the householder treasure was the chief. Of his 84,000 Khattiya retainers, the counselor treasure was the chief. His 84,000 cows had tethers of fine jute and milk pails of silver. His 84,000 bales of clothing were of the finest linen, cotton, silk, and wool. His 84,000 rice offerings were there for the taking by those in need, evening and morning. At that time, King Mahāsudassana's 84,000 elephants waited on him evening and morning, and he thought, "These 84,000 elephants wait on me evening and morning. How if, at the end of each century, 42,000 elephants were to wait on me, turn and turn about?" And he gave instructions accordingly to his counselor treasure, and so it was done. Ananda, after many hundred thousand years, Queen Subhadda thought, "It is a long time since I saw King Mahāsudassana. Suppose I were to go and see him." So she said to her women, "Come now, wash your heads and put on clean clothes. It is long since we saw King Mahāsudassana. We shall go to see him." "Yes, your Majesty," they said, and prepared themselves as ordered, then returned to the queen. Queen Subhadda said to the counselor treasure, "Friend counselor, draw up the fourfold army. It is long since we saw King Mahāsudassana. We shall go and see him." "Very good, your Majesty," said the counselor treasure, and having drawn up the fourfold army, he reported to the queen, "Now is the time to do as your Majesty wishes." Then Queen Subhadda went with the fourfold army and her womenfolk to the Dhamma palace, and entering went to the great gabled chamber and stood leaning against the doorpost. King Mahāsudassana, thinking, "What is this great noise, as of a crowd of people?" came out of the door and saw Queen Subhadda leaning against the doorpost, and he said, "Stay there, Queen, do not enter." Then King Mahāsudassana said to a certain man, "Here, good man, go to the great gabled chamber. Bring the gold couch out and lay it down among the gold palm trees." "Very good, sire," said the man, and he did so. Then King Mahāsudassana adopted the lion posture on his right side with one foot on the other, mindful and clearly aware. Then Queen Subhadda thought, "King Mahāsudassana's faculties are purified. His complexion is clear and bright. Oh, I hope he is not dead." So she said to him, "Sire, of your 84,000 cities, Kusavati is the chief. Make a wish, aroused a desire to live there, thus reminding him of all his royal possessions, as she exhorted him to wish to stay alive. At this, King Mahāsudassana said to the queen, "For a long time, queen, you spoke pleasing, delightful, attractive words to me. But now, at this last time, your words have been unpleasing, undelightful, unattractive to me. Sire, how then am I to speak to you? This is how you should speak. All things that are pleasing and attractive are liable to change, to vanish, to become otherwise. Do not, sire, die filled with longing. To die filled with longing is painful and blameworthy. Of your 84,000 cities, Kusavati is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 gabled halls, the great gabled chamber is the chief. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live there, great king. Of your 84,000 couches of gold, silver, ivory, sandalwood, covered with fleece, wool, spread with kadali deer hide, with head covers, with red cushions at both ends. Abandon desire, abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 elephants adorned with gold ornaments, with gold banners and spread with gold nets, Uposhata, the royal tusker, is the chief. Abandon, great king, abandon desire, abandon the longing to live with him. Of your 84,000 carriages, covered with lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, or with orange-colored cloth, adorned with gold ornaments, gold banners, and spread with gold nets, the chariot Vajayanta is the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 jewels, the jewel treasure is the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live with it. Of your 84,000 wives, Queen Subhadra, I am the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live with her. Of your 84,000 householders, the householder treasure is the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 Khattiya retainers, the counselor treasure is the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live with them. Of your 84,000 palaces, Dhamma is the chief. Abandon desire, great king. Abandon the longing to live there. At this, Queen Subhadra cried out and burst into tears. Then, wiping away her tears, she said, "Sire, all things that are pleasing and attractive are liable to change, to vanish, to become otherwise. Do not, sire, die filled with longing. To die filled with longing is painful and blameworthy." Soon after this, King Mahāsudassana died, and just as a householder or his son might feel drowsy after a good meal, so he felt the sensation of passing away, and he had a favorable rebirth in the Brahma world. King Mahāsudassana indulged in boyish sports for 84,000 years. For 84,000 years he exercised the viceroyalty. For 84,000 years he ruled as king, and for 84,000 years as a layman. He lived the holy life in the Dhamma palace, and having practiced the 4 divine abidings at the breakup of the body, he was reborn in the Brahma world. Now, Ananda, you might think King Mahāsudassana at that time was someone else, but you should not regard it so, for I was King Mahāsudassana then. Those 84,000 cities of which Kusavati was the chief were mine. Of those 84,000 palaces of which Dhamma was chief were mine. Of those 84,000 gabled halls of which the great gabled chamber was chief were mine. Of those 84,000 couches were of gold, silver, ivory, sandalwood, covered with fleece, wool, spread with kadali deer hide, with head covers, with red cushions at both ends, were mine. Of the 84,000 elephants adorned with gold ornaments, with gold banners, and spread with gold nets, Uposhata, which was the chief, were all mine. Of the 84,000 carriages covered with lion skins, tiger skins, leopard skins, or with orange-colored cloth, adorned with gold ornaments, gold banners, and spread with gold nets, of which Vajayanta was chief, were mine. Of the 84,000 jewels, of which the jewel treasure was chief, were mine. Of the 84,000 wives, of which Queen Subhadra was chief, were mine. Of the 84,000 householders, of which the householder treasure was chief, were mine. Of the 84,000 Khattiya retainers, of which the counselor treasure was chief, were mine. Of those 84,000 cities I dwelt in just one, Kusavati. Of those 84,000 palaces, I only dwelt in one, the palace of Dhamma. Of those 84,000 chambers, I only dwelt in the great hall. Of those 84,000 couches, I only used one, made of gold or silver, or ivory or heartwood. Of those 84,000 bull elephants, I only rode one, the royal bull elephant named Uposhata. Of those 84,000 horses, I only rode one, the royal horse named Valahaka. Of the 84,000 chariots, I only rode one, the chariot named Vajayanta. Of the 84,000 wives I had, just one looked after me, and she was called Katyayani. Of the 84,000 bales of cloth I had just one. Of the 84,000 rice offerings there was just one measure of choice curry that I ate. See, Ananda, how all those conditioned states of the past have vanished and changed. Thus, Ananda, conditioned states are impermanent. They are unstable. They can bring us no comfort. And such being the case, Ananda, we should not rejoice in conditioned states. We should cease to take an interest in them and be liberated from them. 6 times, Ananda, I recall discarding this body in this place, and at the 7th time I discarded it as a wheel-turning monarch, a righteous king who had conquered the 4 quarters and established a firm rule, and who possessed the 7 treasures. But, Ananda, I do not see any place in this world with its devas and maras and brahmas, or in this generation with its recluses and brahmins, princes and people, where the Tathagata will for an 8th time discard the body. So spoke the Blessed Lord. The Tathagata, having said this, he continued in verse, impermanent are compounded things, prone to rise and fall. Having risen, they're destroyed, their passing truest bliss. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.